Good day, everyone. I'm your host, James Hicks from Hicks New Media. Welcome to Perspectives in Focus, where we highlight the people, industries, ideas, and technology that are making positive strides within society. Today, we're going to talk about solutions to the systemic problem of well being within the workplace. Recent studies have concluded that this is a major concern both for the employer and also for the individual employee perspective. But listen, you don't necessarily need a white paper or a scientific study to tell you that. You feel it and see it every day within your surroundings. But what are those detriments to well being? How does an organization improve employee engagement, reduce stress and burnout, or simply create a more positive and productive work environment? Today's guest will help answer those questions. Genevieve Hawkins is the author of the book Mentally at Work: Optimizing Health and Business Performance Through Connection. She's a change executive with extensive expertise in leading major change programs in large organizations. We're going to talk about her suggestions for practical, relatable, and scalable guidance that businesses and individuals can take while maintaining that healthy mental state. Folks, let's get into it. Healthy mental state, scalable. Some pretty good adjectives. Are those adjectives, right? Genevieve, how are
And
you
ambitious.
today? How are you?
I'm fantastic, James.
It is tomorrow where you are in Australia. So happy future, or Back to the Future. All those good things. I appreciate you for joining me here on Perspectives in Focus.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Listen, I gave the 30,000 foot kind of overview of kind of who you are, kind of some background in terms of your expertise and what you have done, are doing now. And maybe we can get into a little bit what you will do in the future. But if I always like to have folks tell their origin story, right? Because it's always best coming from the individual themselves. Could you tell folks who Genevieve Hawkins is, please, if you don't mind?
I love the whole thing, James, of origin story that I could go in actually a lot of detail about who I am in some ways, because actually my family origins have also made an influence on what I do. But I actually studied as an occupational therapist originally, so worked as an OT within the health system, and from that I've always had this fascination with how people's brains work and what's going on from a mental illness and then mental health perspective. How do we prevent mental illness, or prevent mental illness from having a significant impact in people's lives? And that's actually then moved on from there. So for me now, and I've moved into a range of different roles, from helping people get back to work who are injured or ill, to then looking at prevention within the workplace, and then actually moving on to other major transformation projects. But there's still this passion that I have for looking at how people thrive at work or don't. So I see so many people who are just surviving, that are going, I'm just getting there, I'm get into work, I get my work done, I get out, but I don't really love it. And so really for me, writing this book is a labor of love. So I have a full-time executive role, and it is in change, so leading major change within organizations. And this book was really about saying, how can I actually, to your place, scalable, practical, relatable things. I think it's my OT background that comes back with those practical things, just to help people to go, can we demystify some of what goes on for us all from a mental health perspective, and then give some practical ideas for self, for team, for organizations to actually make a difference.
Interesting. I see folks jumping in the community, asking comments, having comments and questions. So please, if you do have some questions for Genevieve, put a Q in front of it so I can get those queued up and we can go into those most effectively. The reason and the passion project behind writing the book, why necessarily was that a passion project? What did you see specifically, I guess, in your world, in your realm, that said, listen, someone has to do this, someone has to write this book, someone has to come up with these steps, this curriculum, and these this kind of mindset steps that people can take to do
Yeah.
better and be better within their environments? Why did you really feel that you had to do this?
I think that there's probably a few layers on it. So you sort of talk about going back to origin story.
Hmm.
I'm one of 9 children. I'm
Wow.
the eighth of 9 children,
Okay.
and actually that's a whole podcast in
That's
and
a
of
whole nother
itself.
story right there. We got 2 hours. We can go into that one ourselves.
It impacted me significantly. But actually, what I recognized from being one of 9 in a large family is that I appreciated community. I appreciated what it meant to belong in a large group and how you actually work effectively together to look after one another and do whatever it is that you need to do. In the case of a large family, make sure the dishes are washed and food's on the table and, all those sorts of things. But that then for me reflected when I worked coming into lots of workplaces, what I could see was that sense of community and connection was missing. And when that sense of community and connection was missing, you get the same impacts in terms of what you're trying to achieve within the workplace. And I could see where I could influence and create a level of team and community, what we could achieve, but also what wasn't achieved at an individual or group level without that. So that there for me was a driving force to begin with, of going, if I'm in any role, I want to feel like I belong, and
Hmm.
I want to create that sense of belonging for others because I know what it means for performance if we've got that. So there's been a big driver for that. And then, look, there's been a few different events that have happened in my own life with it, but I think a couple of them that were significant. One of them was that I actually lost one of someone within one of my teams to suicide.
Hmm.
And that was a really hard moment for everyone involved in terms of the impact that it had, and it helped me kind of stop and reflect a bit more on what else can we do as an organisation to actually make a difference in that space. And then, really, actually, the final impetus for me was I was moving on from a role in which I was doing a lot in the mental health space into a different transformation role. And my old team was saying, you need to get out what's in your head and put it on paper. Because if you want to scale this, because I'd always talked about, I wanted, this is big, right? This is big across the globe. We have some significant challenges. There's a tsunami coming our way of real problems from a mental health perspective.
True.
And so for me, this is about, I want to be scalable too, in terms of having that level of impact in helping people to understand what to do to make a difference in the organisations, because we don't talk about it enough. We
Exactly.
we think, and I think COVID's helped a bit in the conversation, but it's kind of like for quite some time, business is kind of like business is business, and individual health is, that's your problem over there, and
Yeah.
that's not our problem. Where it fundamentally is our problem in business.
It's interesting that you bring up COVID because I was gonna ask about that as well, right? And not to put blame necessarily on COVID, but to say, but that was actually the stoppage of the planet, right? We had a bunch of time, amount of time that the planet did stop there, and a lot of folks really went through with the withdrawal, went through emotional turmoil of not having that community, to use the word that you used as well, not having that connection, not being able to go next door and have dinner with their friends, right? That really took a toll on a lot of folks in terms of um, how they progress throughout the day and how they live their daily lives. And some folks haven't come out of that yet, right? Even though the world is starting to open up from a mental perspective. Let's talk about that from personal and also how they deal with that professionally, because really, look, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations have looked at the lockdown and said, we can still do what we need to do on the professional side with you being remote, with you just locked into Zoom or Teams or whatever the case may be. You don't have to come into the office. In fact, many offices have closed. So, I mean, just that aspect, while it sounds as a positive work perk, right? I can work at home in my sweatpants and my house slippers or whatever the case may be, but I no longer have that camaraderie. I no longer can go and hang out at the water cooler with Genevieve and have a cup of coffee or something like that. Talk a little bit about kind of the different aspects of what COVID did to on the professional and the personal lives of the employees, and then maybe we can go into the employer side. But again, the individuals, what happened during that time when we were locked down, and then what that is, what you've seen happen since that time that the
Yeah.
world stopped.
That's there's so much there, and so I obviously my accent shows that I'm from Australia. We I live in Melbourne, and
Okay.
I don't. I think Melbourne. I don't know whether it still holds the record because I don't know what happened in the last little bit in China. But we were holding the record for the city that was the most locked down in the world
Wow.
across COVID. So we have seriously been scarred
My
by what
goodness.
has happened in that time. But I think if I go back, because the talk about just from a base science perspective just for a moment, and maybe they might give it a snippet of how I talk within the book, because I try and go, I want you to understand a little bit of the science, but just in a simple way that gives you a sense of how our brains operate. So we have it's easy to think about a thinking brain and an animal brain.
Hmm.
And so the thinking brain is what we're aware of. So we're sitting there going, we know what we're doing. We're in control of everything. The answer is we're really not in control. We have this animal brain. And when we think about the animal brain, this is the part of the brain that helps us do things like breathing and digesting, sweating, all of those sorts of things that we don't actually consciously control. But that part of the brain is absolutely hardwired for our survival. And there are some things within that brain about how it operates for forever and a day that haven't evolved. And I shouldn't say evolved. This is hardwired for survival anyway. So you'd argue it's the right thing for it to do. Our brain looks for pattern. So there is so much information going on in the world that our brain looks for pattern, because pattern helps to give us a level of, we can clump the information and we don't have to be too overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And when things are different, when things are uncertain, we get more cortisol coming in. So we get stress kind of coming in, because the brain at the animal level is sitting there going, oh, things are different and I can't quite work out what's going on. And we had that on steroids during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
because, and in fact, I'd argue we still have it. So this is the problem, that we've kind of, in the midst of this space, we're in a, whoa, what's happening? Not too sure. This is all
Right.
new. So our brains were getting overloaded. Now, our brains are also hardwired for connection. We recognize that whole concept of safety in numbers. And you go back to Neolithic time, if you're out in the middle of the wild on your own, that's pretty scary. But if you've got a tribe, this is good. This is good. We can protect ourselves. So right at a time where we were feeling overwhelmed because everything was different, we were then thrown into an environment where we didn't have all of our tribe. We
Mm-hmm.
were isolated in a house, which has a massive, massive effect on how our brains are coping with things. And I think in the shift, and what I'm seeing here across the globe is differences now in terms of how workplaces are adjusting. So there are some workplaces, to your point, of going, oh, we don't need the workplace. Like, you can just do your work anywhere. It's fine. And there are other organisations struggling with, no, actually, we want to demand that people come back. And there's this interesting conversation around, will people go, no, I'm not going to come back.
Right.
So I don't want to work for you. Or organisations, and certainly our organisation that I currently work with is one of those that we go hybrid. How do we kind of manage both? But within that, we are still hardwired for this connection. We can't get rid of that bit. And so we will struggle as individuals if we don't feel that complete belonging. Now, we can sit there and go, our belonging comes from family or friends, and that sense of connection or tribe is outside of the workplace. But when we say that, and that's what it is, there's only so much that we will give from a performance point of view from work, because it's
Gotcha.
just the paycheck. It's just a paycheck, and that is it. So we come in, we've got a job, we do a task, we may not, when we don't give our love and passion to the task, it's not always created the best it could be. So we miss out then, because then we are we're going through the motions rather than actually feeling like we're part of something bigger.
So how do we get out of that cycle? Right. Where I guess, let me ask this, the onus of the education piece, is the onus on, this is how I feel and how I need to be attended to in the office in my professional world, or is it really is it managing up or managing down, right? Does the employer or the employee really have the onus on saying, this is how I prefer and perform better within a work environment? Again, because everything has shifted ever since the world stopped. We throw all the old rules out the window, because now we have a whole different mentality in terms of how we operate. Is it my responsibility to tell my employer that James needs to only work 7 to 12, and then needs a siesta for 2 hours? Right.
Yeah.
Again, who really should bear the burden of explaining that particular mindset, mentality, and a need within the workspace?
So the I'm going to say it's both people's responsibility, but with a slightly different lens, if you like, um, to what you say, because it. So at an individual level, so we start at the individual level. I'd go everyone, and I'd go. This is why I wrote the book,
I was,
because it
that's where I was
actually
feeding.
goes
Actually,
into.
that's exactly where. Work with me here.
There's a
I'm
lot more
feeding what
detail,
no.
lot more detail in here.
Right.
But there's a level. So at an individual level, we own our own health. And we have to take responsibility for our own health. And we need to understand our mental health as well as much as our physical health. And what, again, part of writing the book was to try and get people to understand a bit more about their mental health, because most people get it with physical health. And I also say, most people get it if you, eat donuts and smoke cigarettes every day. At some point, that's going to be a problem for you.
The utility
Might
is
not
going
be
to wear off
tomorrow.
for that. Exactly right.
So at some point, and so we get that. We get the things, we're taught more about what we need to do to look after our physical health. We're not taught as well about what to look after our mental health. And so the first part is saying we have to understand that and own it. But in owning it, it's not a you need to do this for me,
Mm,
because if we're in that mindset, then we're placing our own health in someone else's hands.
I
And
like
I'd
that.
go,
Okay.
don't ever
Yeah.
do that. Don't ever do that. It's I'm choosing these things. I'm responsible, and I'm going to adjust what I'm doing to help it work for me. So there's kind of that bit of saying you've got to understand it and own your own health, and don't ask anyone else to do it for you. It's like with physical exercise, etc. You can't have someone, you need to make sure that I run every day, and you're going, well,
Yes.
actually, no, that's not my responsibility. You
I always say I
need to do
can't
that.
motivate someone else to go hit the gym and go train. You have to have that motivation built internal. So I agree with you 100% on that. Love it.
So exactly the same with mental health. That's going to happen. Now, then when you then talk about it from an employer perspective, then my challenge to employers is going, you can't ignore how the workplace impacts people's mental health. And so, as an
Mm,
employer, you need to understand the things you do that actually contribute to either building up people's mental health or, in fact, destroying it or impacting it negatively. And so, again, you can't sit back and I say to employers, you can't sit back and go, oh well, I'll ask the employers and what do they want, and I'll do what they want, because again, you go, no, that doesn't work either. You need to take responsibility as a leader. And in fact, again, I mean, go back to the book, but in the book, there is advice talking about it in these layers of what do you do as a leader in an organisation for yourself.
hmm.
So, how do you look after yourself? And then how do you have better conversations one on one with people that build up people's mental health? And then how do you look at the team or the organisation and saying, what are you choosing to do and how you're designing work and the workplace, which helps to improve people's mental health? It's not going to solve everything. It's the same. If I look at the physical health side of things, I go from an employer perspective, you're not responsible for someone's physical health. However, if you are asking them to work, 20 hours a day,
Right.
7 days a week, that's going to impact their health, because they're not going to be able to sleep, and they're not going to be able to eat, and
Health,
they're not going to be
performance,
able to
all of that, right? I mean,
all of that.
there is a domino effect to those types of things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I brought that up specifically, and I do see the comments in the coming up from the community, and I will get to those in just a second. But I was leading you kind of in the direction, yet referring more to the book, and then also specifically to this mental health pie, right? The mental health pie ingredients that you referenced with the book, and if you could talk a little bit about how this fits again in terms of how the employee, again, that's why I started with the employee themselves, can take the ownership for their own mental health, and then how they can translate that out to their colleagues, to their employers as well. So if you could talk a little bit about this concept of the mental health pie and the ingredients that you have within this.
Absolutely. So, and you said again, I always go on that and then read the book because it's got a bit more detail in it. But so the basics around this, and the reason why I think about mental health pie, and in fact, I reference in the book, I had gone to see a musical around the time that I was writing this. I'd gone to see the musical Waitress, and I don't know whether anyone's seen that, but they talk about pies in there. And when I'm talking about what is it that's going to be the best model, and I'm like, oh, it's a pie. It's a pie. Like, fantastic way of describing it. Because what you want to think about with a pie is that it needs certain ingredients, otherwise it's not a pie. And so that's kind of the first thing about saying you can't just do one thing and you go, that's my one thing and I've got my mental health sorted. You're
Mm.
going, there's a combination of ingredients that make it work, that call it a pie. But everyone likes different flavors. And so there's a basic kind of ingredient concept, but then you want to influence and change that a little bit based on what it is that works for you. Then of course you eat the pie, so you need to actually make the pie again, so you've got to kind of keep renewing it. And at some points in time, some people can eat one flavor pie for a long period of time and it's great, but there's a point for all of us, could be short or long term, in terms of which we get bored of the flavor's not quite doing it for us. We still need the pie, so we still need the food, but we need to change it up a bit. So I want to give that as a premise to begin with, because the first rule in terms of looking after people's mental health is that whilst I can give you some science behind why we need certain parts of the pie,
Mm.
what works for you is going to be different to what works for me. So
Very true. I
I
like
can
that.
sit there and
Yeah.
go, here's some ideas, but that doesn't mean that specifically that'll work for you. So if we go around, so if I start on that top left, connecting to self. Connecting to self is actually being all aware about the animal brain. So it's being able to kind of connect in and go, what are my basic needs? And so it's that recognition of saying, am I sleeping? Am I eating? Am I drinking? Like, am I looking after my physical health? Because physical and mental health are so interconnected, it's not funny. But also, how am I tuning into where I'm at any point in time?
Mm.
So, what are my emotions doing? What's my energy level doing? Am I feeling safe or am I feeling threatened? Because that's that, like, connecting into going, is there too much cortisol running through this animal brain of mine? And again, remember, the cortisol gets triggered because we see uncertainty, difference, we feel like we don't belong. That's where that connects in. So if we go around to connecting to others, so there are these three really interesting, let's call them chemicals, because I think it's easy to think about chemicals in the brain. There's these three chemicals that our animal brain releases that helps to counteract when we're not feeling great, when we're feeling threatened, when we're feeling stressed by what's going on. The first of them is oxytocin, and
Mm.
that is about feeling like we belong. And so the next ingredient of the pie, after we've connected to self and we're aware of our own self, is to connect to others, because we all need our tribe. We all need that place where we go, oh, I feel safe. Oh, I feel like I belong. And I mean, you start talking about workplace as well as home. We do need that at work. Like, that's kind of a critical thing that businesses need to grapple with, is that you have to have a tribe at work. It can't be just at home.
Right.
So there are people that you feel like, I belong with. I've got something in common with. I can, talked about laugh with, share pain with. What about, whatever it might be. It's people, my people. If I go around then, in fact, I'm going to go across diagonally then to contribution, because then contribution is about eliciting a chemical called serotonin. So if I go back to Neolithic time, because that's kind of a good way of describing it, about going, if I'm on my own in a wild, out in the wild, it's pretty scary. If I've got a group, then I feel more comfortable and safe with that group. If I've got a specific role to play in that group and that role is valued, then actually that makes me feel even safer and better. So if I'm the one that's really good at lighting a fire, or I'm the one that's really good at tracking those,
Interesting. Okay.
the wild bear's footprints and finding them, or finding the berries that go really well, whatever it might be, if I have a role and that role is valued, then that makes me feel safer, because I get serotonin hits that says, you've got some good skill here. You're valued, you're contributing. This is awesome. So we need to feel that. And then the last one is curiosity, because remember, talking about our brain is wired for pattern and keeps looking out for pattern in the world. This is food for learning patterns, looking at stuff and working out stuff is food for the brain.
Mm.
If we're just sort of stuck in our nothing's changing and what have you, then actually it's not good for the brain. In fact, there's all sorts of research talking about trying, how do we help to prevent things like dementia, and the importance of even of the simplest things like crosswords, of how do you keep getting your brain working and learning and thinking. We need curiosity.
Okay.
And the interesting thing within that is that that's a chemical called dopamine that we get there when we feel great, because we've gone, aha, I've achieved this, I've learned this, and my brain's going, that's awesome. And now dopamine gets a bad rap because it's often connected with addiction, particularly in terms of things like, the social media of going, I've got to keep going, how many likes can I get, or
Right. Right.
gambling. So dopamine can be overplayed if it's caught up in the wrong things, but it is actually an important part if we're consciously working out how do I stay curious and learn. So essentially, the pie, when we're looking about everyone's mental health, saying you've got to look after all of these four things. You've got to work out how do you connect yourself. And again, the book gives you some tips and tricks on some of those exercises that you can do to help learn a bit more about what's going on for you. Then connecting to others, how do I find my tribe? How do I contribute to that tribe? And how do I stay curious? And if I've got that combination in my pie, I've got the best bet of looking after my mental health.
It's almost like you guys were reading my show notes because you touched on some things that I was going to ask. So I'm not even going to look over here at my notes because talking about the social media aspect and the I consider it a detriment to our youth. Well, almost to the entire society because again, that swipe and you swipe left, swipe right, 3 seconds, and I have your attention span. And after that, I can't. Maybe I'll go into that a little bit later. But the interesting point that you mentioned, I want to make sure that isn't overlooked: the fact that you consume the pie once, but then I guess you said you bake another one, and you continue to evolve. You continue to digest. You continue to make contributions. You continue to be curious. You continue to make sure that you're right. You go through all of these things more than once, and you evolve into. That's how you would evolve into a healthy mental state being by not just doing it once, not just getting things done one time, not just checking stuff off of your list one time, but actually continuing consciously to go through these steps, adding these ingredients, adding these particular aspects to your life to make sure that you are a whole, self-sufficient member of society,
Human
right?
being.
You can't just do this one time. I like that concept because again,
You
a lot of other
cannot do it just once.
yeah, a lot of other frameworks and philosophies will say, go out there, get this, do this, get this done, right? But no real subsequent types of activities, no types of things in terms of longevity, and like we said at the beginning, scalable, right? So allowing you to do
And
this from a long-term perspective.
absolutely. I mean, it's the same as saying, if you have one day or you go on a retreat and you go, look at that, I've eaten brilliantly for a week and
Right.
I've done some great exercise and yoga and I come out going, I feel fantastic. And you're going, that's great for that
For
week.
that week,
But if you go back to donuts and
if you do
cigarettes
it
and
2 weeks before
sleeping
Thanksgiving and then Thanksgiving comes and well, that's another conversation. Get Genevieve's book. Um,
yeah.
let me ask you this, and we're going to bring this. Well, I'll actually bring this up in terms of a question here. Jim, I love you here. It's just part of the larger book tour. Yes, this is Genevieve. This is part of her larger book tour, and you can find her book at any major retailer. I actually put the link in the description, and I've pinned it in the comments of where you can actually get her book as well. So it's available on her website and also on Amazon. But
I was
yes.
going to say Amazon. You get to Amazon, you'll get faster. Probably. Well, I can say I have to post it from Australia if it's by my website. But it is, Jim. It's on Audible and Kindle as well as paperback.
Oh yes. Listen, I get credits for Audible, and it is in my list to add to my Audible subscription when my next credits roll around on the 27th. So you're on my list, right?
I'm
And
on
then
my list.
on the 27th, when I get my next monthly credit from Audible, I'll be
Well,
downloading.
and you'll get to hear me read it too, James. It's me talking. So there you
That's
go.
see, that's even better because so like my David Goggins books, right? The fact that he's actually in the audiobook and talking about it, it's always better to hear the voice and the inflection and from the author themselves. So I love that. So there you go, folks. Go get the book from Amazon. The link is in the comments and the link is in the description as well. Um, Cheryl is here and she's asked a question. She says, in the book excerpt, you say a percentage of depression up with Australian people was a conclusion based on the pandemic aftermath. I think we kind of touched on that as well, but I wanted to be cognizant of the question in the community and let
Yeah,
you
no. Well,
answer.
so the answer actually shows no, because I actually wrote the book pre-pandemic, and so we've seen worse things since COVID has come through.
Mm.
But this was one of these things where I was watching the world pre-COVID and going, there's this tsunami coming, that the way that our world is operating, we're going to be hit by these waves. And of course, I hadn't seen COVID around the corner, and I ended up publishing the book in the first year of COVID, but it had already been written just before COVID started. In fact, I questioned whether I'd actually publish it because I thought, oh, everyone's now talking about it. And my sister kicked me up the backside and said, get that book out. You've still got to get that out. But there's no doubt that what you've then seen over those years of COVID is that then we've continued to worsen. And then you add on to that, there's so many other things in the world that's causing uncertainty. And this is part of the challenge. Essentially, our brains need certainty and connection to actually feel okay. And so what's happening, not just with COVID, but with things like wars, the climate change uncertainty, what's going on with regards to, I'm going to say, polarizing views on things, wherever it might be. So certainly from Australia, watching, I mean, Australia's got a whole range of challenges as well, but from watching America, seeing some of the things from a racial tension perspective, some of those things where things are quite polarized, that's actually also contributing to how our brains are feeling, and that uncertainty and loss of connection, or kind of feeling like we're being attacked. So it's like, I've got to stick with my tribe because I'm being attacked. But actually, the challenge for us is to try and understand that our tribe is a human race, and that's the bigger challenge that we need to get to.
There it is right there. Mr. Worthy, you joined just in time because Genevieve just dropping gems right here talking about mental health, mental awareness, how to deal from a professional and a personal perspective. So glad you were here, sir. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the questions from the community because they're more important than anything that I have to ask. Mr. Natividad here is saying recommendations for working around cognitive disabilities, right? Combat wounded from TBI, trying to remain competitive, and self-doubt is his biggest obstacle. Your thoughts and how to address that niche of society, right? Who have external, internal forces affecting them from being able to, I don't even want to say be successful, but just maybe flourish, right? In a way that they want to. So they're definitely successful, but just being able to flourish in a way that they want to after going through particular traumas of things of that nature, TBI, PTSD, combat veterans, things of that nature. Your thoughts on that?
So I'll perhaps start off with saying there's a level of saying individually there's certain circumstances. So you kind of want to make sure that you've got the right, I'm going to say, support crew to actually help to guide some of those sorts of things. And I think if I saw right at the last bit of that might have been one of the challenges at the bottom. Was saying that it's the challenge of doubting myself. Self-doubt is my biggest obstacle. Yeah. So so actually, David, one of the really interesting things is that whilst people won't always articulate it, certainly some of the research I've read, but some of the experiences I've had with group conversation exploring this is self-doubt is one of the most common things for everyone, actually, that holds us back in various ways. And so that becomes a challenge for anyone, but it's more amplified when people have particular other challenges from a cognitive perspective. So I think the couple of things that I would say with it, the first one in connecting to self is to be able to sit back a bit and look at what are the best types of roles that I could play that are actually true to who I want to be. And I often get people to draw the three circles of what am I good at, what do I love doing, and what's important to me, and how do I create a bit of that and help to create what that intersection is in the middle of those three becomes your self-selection criteria for any job, so that you're clear, you're not choosing a job because this is what people expect me to do or this is a career advancement. My challenge to people is saying don't have org chart envy, so don't look for title, but look for roles that sing to your heart, that actually make a difference there. As part of that, invariably in that selection criteria needs to be the tribe of the workplace. So looking at the culture that you're in within the workplace is a really, really important thing. And again, this comes to when we talk about then business leaders saying, if you're leading these organizations and you want to get some of the best talent out there, you need to create that tribe. You need to create that safe space that people want to be part of. And the other part, and I do go into it in a bit of detail in the book, is talking about who's on your board. And
Mm.
this idea of saying we are the CEOs of our own lives. And so, if in an organization, if you're a good, I go CEO. I know it's like EVP in I think in US terms more I think is used than CEO. But if I'm sitting at the top of an organization and I'm running an organization, any good CEO or executive at the top has a good board around them. Now, in the context of a business, that's you have financial skills and legal skills and risk management skills and people skills. So you've got different people that you reach out to get different advice on things. And what you want to then be able to do with regards to your personal life is go, well, I'm the CEO of my own life. I'm responsible for that. And so who else do I get around me that can actually help me be my best? And again, you come back to tribal, we all need that. When you've got some cognitive challenges, you want to think clearly about the people that add the best value in those. But one of those people that I talk about is the strength. We need people who can stop and remind us of the good things in us, the good skills, the things that we are making a difference with, so that it helps us to overcome the challenge of saying we've all got flaws, we've got different areas that we are challenged on, but having those people around you that go, hey, you're awesome, and let me remind you of your awesomeness and the skills that you bring to the table is a really important part of challenging that self-doubt. Now, hopefully that gives enough an answer. That that's a whole said that we can go into all sorts of
Yeah.
detail there, but hopefully that gives you a bit there, David.
No, I mean that's a good start, and I think a good foundation. And I think hopefully, Mr. Natividad, if that helps, and I'll put the link up to the book as well, and we can actually have a subsequent session with Genevieve if necessary. But those are the kinds of things, right? Just having those support groups, having those tribes, as you, I like that word, the tribe, right? Having those councils, I call them my inner circle, right? Having
Yeah.
those folks that will tell you when you're wrong, will tell you when you're right, but will be objective and subjective at times when necessary. Who Steve Worthy, who's in the comments, I can call him at 2 o'clock in the morning and he can yell at me and he can scream at me, but we can hash things out and we can have those types of personal and professional conversations. And I think not shying away from the need for community, for a tribe, for support systems is something that we need to be cognizant of. So almost back to who owns the piece, right? And I think the individual, so not just on the professional side, but on the personal side, owns that outward reach, because I can't say I don't know how you're feeling, Genevieve, right? I don't know what's going on inside you all the time, but I can be receptive when you do reach out, and there's no stigma. There should be no stigma. There should be no shame in reaching out, picking up that phone, sending me a chat message or whatever, when there is a need for you to connect with that tribe or that community, that inner circle kind of thing. That's my summarizing. Again, I'm an old guy. I don't know these. That's why you're
No,
here.
no,
You're the
James,
expert.
remember, you're not old. You're not old,
Oh,
remember?
that's
It's in
right.
your
We're
heart.
seasoned.
You're
That's right.
not old.
We talked
Yeah.
about that before. There we go. We're seasoned. So
Yeah, that like we're not born to be alone. Like we are wired to be with people, and we have to recognize that everyone has a contribution to us. It's that was it takes a village to raise a child.
yes,
I'm not too sure where that who said that originally, but it's actually it takes a village to live a healthy life.
that is true. We cannot do it. Man, we can go on and talk about that for a long time as well, right? Again, there's no need in being so proud that you have to do everything yourself, because you won't succeed. You just really won't succeed if you want to look at folks who have whatever your definition of success is from a financial perspective, whatever the case may be. They've all done it together with someone else. They've had co-owners, co-founders, uh, colleagues, other folks within the C-suite. No one has done anything successful, professional and or personally alone. You really do need that tribe, community, inner circle, things of that nature. Um,
And I just say too that tribe can shift over time a bit as well.
mm, there
So
you go. Yeah.
it's an important thing from a from a what do I need, particularly in the work context, what do I need to bring my best to work? And as you grow, as you learn about yourself, as you experience different things, you might find that you need some other different people around you to help support you in that space. So don't kind of go, I've got my tribe, that's it, don't move.
Yes.
Allow that to grow and flourish as well.
And these concepts are obviously talked about within the book as well, right? Again, maintaining that tribe, identifying that tribe. And I like the concept that you just mentioned right there. There is a time where we may have to cut somebody off. Right, the old guys, or the old crew that you grew up with and went to high school and went to college with, yeah, that was good for a season, maybe not for this season. And
Yeah,
again, there should be no shame, there should be no hesitation in evolving. If those others that were around you at a particular season within your life aren't on the same trajectory as you, it really is okay. uh,
it
I'm living through
absolutely is.
this myself right now. So again, I'm pointing one finger out at you and three fingers at me, saying, it really is okay to evolve and move on. It's not a slight on anyone. Again, it's just different seasons, and we all have to evolve at our own space and our own time frame. Um, there you go.
Absolutely.
I got me a
And
little lesson there as well for myself. So selfishly, this is all about me, you guys. I'm sorry.
uh, fantastic. If I can help one person, that's all right. So I've helped you, James. All good.
And listen, one of my friends says, "Reach one, teach one." Right. So, and that's enough for me right there. Again, I want to be cognizant of the community because their questions and their inquiries are more important than mine by all means. Cheryl is asking again: the stigma of mental health issues, can it cause judgmental feelings with people getting help or discussing with management? So having that stigma of maybe something's different with the way I operate, the way I need to operate at work. What are
So
some best practices of going and talking to leadership and management about how I need to have some accommodations, I guess?
now, this is definitely where I go. Please get the book because I can't do justice fully to it. But if I go at a simple way, so is there a risk of a stigma being attached to it when you go and talk to management? There absolutely is that risk
Mm,
if the management are not actually aware and thinking about what it is that we need to do more broadly within the organisation. So my challenge, and again, that when I wrote the book, I was wanting to target people who are in leadership roles to go read this and
mm,
think about it, not just for yourself but your own organisation. Because one of the most, I guess, one of the first things that I start off with is get a common language. And if you get a common language in the workplace, that's actually what helps to take the stigma away, so that there's that base part. And so in the book I go, here's some ideas about how you can talk about mental health so that everyone recognizes actually we're all vulnerable. So that's kind of point number one, we are all vulnerable. So if you think about physical health, and I'm talking in the book about this continuum from green to yellow to orange to red. In our physical health, there are some things that people are born with that give them physical limitations. There
mm,
are some things that people have genetics with that mean that they've got an increased disposition for physical problems. And there are some things that happen to people that traumatically mean that they land in this space of really struggling physically. But most of the reason why we end up struggling physically is because of our lifestyle choices day to day that impact on
mm,
our physical health. It is exactly the same with our mental health. And so there are absolutely some people who are born with problems right from the word go. There are people who have a genetic predisposition to certain things that means an event happens and it triggers something. And we have people, exposed to significant traumatic events that causes people to suddenly really struggle mentally. But most of what lands people in the red in really struggling, and it's the most common things around anxiety and depression, are actually associated with what our choices are day to day and how we choose to live. And so being able to help in an organisation to get people to understand everyone is vulnerable helps, first of all, to take away some of the stigma. And the second one is finding a language. And I mean, in the book, I talk about that continuum because it's easy to be able to go, hey, James, I'm having a bit of a yellow day today. I just need a bit of help. Makes it easier than saying, James, my depression isn't well under control today, and
mm.
I'm, like it creates an easy language. And if everyone understands that, you go, oh, you're having a yellow day today, no probs. Let me change a couple of things. Whereas you're going, I'm sliding into orange, then you're going, okay, hang on a minute, what help do you need?
I
let's have a
love
look
that.
at what else we do, you
Yeah.
know. So common understanding of our all of our vulnerability and to a common language makes a huge difference in a workplace to help to remove that stigma.
I love that because that's actually that next layer down of kind of how we started before we went live when I asked, "How are you doing today?" Right. And then if you just say, "I'm okay," but if someone can sense that you're probably not doing okay, having that common language within the organization, again, that it's sponsored and that it's known across the organization. I'm having a yellow day, I'm having an orange day, whatever the marker is for your particular company, that really sets the standard for, okay, so Genevieve is having this type of day. These are the resources that she needs. This is how we can step back, lean in, whatever the case. But again, I just ask you how you're doing today, and you say I'm doing okay, and I sense that it's not right. Well, and without me being evasive and prying and say, no, tell the truth. Tell me how are you really doing? I like the fact of having that common language within the organization. But again, that is that top down. That has to come and be owned and sponsored, I think, from leadership as well, because the individual
Absolutely.
employees are going to buy in, right? In anything that's built for their betterment and for their well-being, I think the employees are always going to buy in. But if the leadership, if the supervisors, the managers, the whomever the executives don't buy into that, and it's not gonna go anywhere. So all the leaders out there, everyone on LinkedIn watching this in the business world, make sure you get Genevieve's book. The link, see, little pitch for
So
plug for the book
go on
there.
Amazon because we want to promote it and get it
That's
going
true. That's
across
true.
the
It's all
world.
about Amazon. We want to get it off of Amazon so you can get it tomorrow instead of the
Yeah,
2 week shipment from Australia.
from Australia.
Those kinds of things. Um,
And it's cheaper too.
you get what you pay for, though. There you go. You get what you pay for.
Well, I know it's the same book. It's just a different
Geez,
distribution
work
channels.
with me. I'm trying to work with me to work with you on
Sorry,
this.
James. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Worthy is asking a question. With so many people concerned about AI replacing them, how can someone overcome these fears and use AI to leverage their performance? It's almost a different conversation, but let me add on to this, Steve, if you don't mind. I'm going to interject and ad lib. How do we maintain our positive mental state within the workplace, knowing that there may be external forces that could be knocking on our door that could replace us, right? The pervasiveness of AI is not going away, right? It's here. It's been here, but now it's here, and now it's commonplace, and now folks are seeing it on the news, and they're reading about it in the papers, whatever the case may be, and they're intimidated by it. How does one stay locked in and focused? How does one stay productive mentally, physically,
Mm,
and all the
mm.
abilities at work
We,
with these robots and these algorithms
we,
possibly taking over?
yeah, we could be here for the whole
Let's go.
day, couldn't
Listen,
we?
well, you know what? I got another session in about an hour and a half, but we can reschedule and we can bring you into the community and we can talk more one on one.
So let me just give a couple of sort of quick things within that, because in fact, funnily enough, in my current role with the stuff I'm doing, I'm actually implementing AI into the business that I'm supporting as well. So I'd say a couple of things. I want to talk specifically actually in that reference to AI and the broader piece around change, because the interesting thing is that absolutely the world is changing, and the rate at which things will change from a technology point of view is going to blow us away. So, what in 10 years' time, we're going to look back at what we were doing and how we were operating now and laugh and go, I can't believe that we were, doing this. I can't believe we used paper. It's like we laugh and go, I can't believe people used chalkboards or slates back in the day, and now we're in a different world. So things are rapidly changing. As I read stuff around the impact of AI, and absolutely some jobs will change, but actually nothing takes away from what is really important, and what AI can't do is about human connection. And so we might be able to go, AI can help us to give some incredible insights, but actually what we need then is the skill set to say, how do we take that and get people inspired and excited to do things? And so our ability to connect with people and our ability to lead change becomes really, really, really important in getting best results from things like AI. So there's a kind of part answer to that on AI. The other part for me James, to your broader question, that there is absolutely constant change.
Mm,
And how do we manage the things that are constantly changing? It keeps coming back to tribe. So it's how do we stay, if I feel safe because I feel like I belong with a team and I'm contributing to a team, collectively as a team, we can then be curious about what's happening out there in the world and what are the
mm,
things that are impacting on us, and how do we get excited in that curiosity going, oh, this is interesting, we've just been faced with this next mountain. As a collective, how do we look at each other and go, right team, how do we want to deal
yeah,
with this now, what do we want to
yeah.
do? But the connection between each other and that safety of going, I play a role in this team, we've got to get that in order to be able to get excited and curious about the changes that are happening around us.
Excited, curious, pieces of the pie, which we continue to consume as we continue to evolve. Just bringing it all together. I love that
Love it.
piece. Um, Genevieve, what's next, right? I mean, you've got the book out, and hopefully it's having some positive impact. I know it's had positive impact on my community here because I'm getting some back channel messages as well. Folks are saying that they enjoy this show and they love the comments here. Um, where can folks continue to stay in touch with you? Yeah, I've got your website listed below you there, the mentalyatwork.com.au. But talk to us a little bit about how folks can learn more about what you're doing and the book that you're talking about right now and anything else that you may got going in the near future.
So this is perhaps where my, my publicist might, hit me across the wrist and going, Genevieve, you need to do more. What are you doing? So I'd go, starting point is the book. Have a read of the book. I do have, I'm on Instagram as Mentally at Work. So happy for you to follow me on Mentally at Work. I've got to get better at actually putting out things, as I sort of try and periodically put something out there from a reflection point of view on different things to keep people thinking about stuff. And I am doing so via my website. I am at times doing, paid speaking events or paid facilitation type things. So you can reach out to me. I'm juggling that with a normal executive job as well. But there are, for me, it's actually having these sorts of conversations, James, that are really, really important to go read the book, think about it. How do we digest that? What are the things that we can practically do now to make a difference? I am planning to write another book, but that might take a couple of years before it gets out, which is going a little bit deeper into part of one of the chapters within the book on some of the common challenges in the workplace and helping leaders to think about this from a mental health perspective. But at the moment, really, the main aim is to try and get the word out around there's these practical things we can all do. And if we can start understanding that common language and do some of those practical things collectively, we can actually make a difference. And said my ambition is saying, how can we collectively reverse the trend on mental illness in the developed world? But we can only do that if we understand some of these basics together.
Mm, I love that. I love that. One final question that I want to ask because we've talked on this topic and this statement for a while today, and it's you mentioned tribe, team. How important is being in person versus remote these days, right? And again,
Oh,
that I know again we can take kick your shoes off, pour another cup of tea, right? We can
let's have
go
another
for a while with
conversation.
that, but I mean that really kind of is at the heart of it, right? Because we started on that being remote, being at home, not being around the community, around the tribe, around those inner circle. I mean that really is that can be detrimental to a high majority of folks when for decades we've been that we've been in the office, we've been at the coffee shop, we've done those kinds of collaborative activities, and now it's all Zoom and Teams and WebEx and whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. Your thoughts on what Cheryl was saying?
So I'd sit there and go, nothing beats in person. Nothing beats in person. No matter how good technology gets, no matter how much we feel with some
Hmm,
technology, it's like people are literally in the room. We are physical human beings, and nothing beats that physical connection.
that's good.
Um, so I'd encourage workplaces to think about how can you create at least, and I'd go create hybrid. So create the ability to go, I do want some flex. I do want to be able to be home by a certain time to pick kids up, or For me, typically Mondays I work from home, and I love the fact that on Monday at lunchtime I can actually put a slow cooked meal on for dinner, and it's ready for dinner at a good
Yeah,
time for the family. And I can smell this, the afternoon aroma coming
I
through.
love it.
But we all have these things. So I think trying to find the balance between the two is really important. And then there's a whole other chapter or conversation we could have around when we are remote, because the reality is, and I think even like pre-COVID, I was always running teams of teams across Australia. So I was used to the fact that I wouldn't see my team all the time. So there was still, at least, there were times when you go, I'm making the effort to go and see them and connect with them. But then it's also, what else do you do to create rituals of connection? So that's the other
Mm,
piece of saying, even if you are virtual, what are the rituals of connection that really help you feel like you belong? But the two practical things I would say, well, one practical, one kind of perhaps a bit harder. The harder bit is saying, I will still feel connected to you in a workplace, even if I'm remote, if I believe in the cause for what I'm doing. So if I have a sense of purpose and really find meaning in the work that I do, I can still feel a level of connection to the bigger piece of what the organisation's doing, even though I'm remote. So that's number one. So it's, how do you help people to get meaning? And the second one is actually around, this is a practical one, find out what you have in common with that person that has nothing to do with work, and remember that, and weave that
mm.
into conversations. So I am, thanks to my son, a mad Star Wars and Marvel fan. And
I
so I love the fact
love it.
that when, a new Mandalorian comes out, I have people going, "Oh, a new Mandalorian's out." So you find those little things that you can have a
That's
bit of
too
a
cool.
laugh about and a conversation with. They're little, but they make a difference. To go, my brain then registers, I'm part of the tribe with you because you're a Star Wars fan, or you like cooking like I do, or you like cats like I do. Whatever it might be, our brain recognizes that.
Man, I love that. That's perfect right there. Hopefully, Shirley, I saw her comment there. She said that feedback is exactly what she was looking for, and that just really hits home. Again, finding things outside of the business space to try to connect with folks, and kind of a nice icebreaker. So that's huge. Love that. Genevieve, I wish you nothing but the success in on this book. On the 27th, when I get my audiobook, I'll ping you and let you know, because I'll start reading it when I'm at the gym. I'll listen to music in my AirPods. I actually have audiobooks going, so I'll be underneath the squat rack listening to you. So hopefully
Love.
there's a successful story there.
Well, I look forward to hearing your aha moments, James. That it's actually, part of what can help with that sort of stuff. Love, ping me like on Instagram.
Yeah.
Potentially is probably the easiest way. But tell me your aha moments when you read stuff. I love.
Okay.
I sometimes get pictures that people send me, the book with all of their sticky notes stuck through them of all the things that have gone. Oh, I've got to do this and this and this and this and this. That's the, I go, I'm helping people if I can see those sorts of things. So, but hopefully today has been, giving people a few, practical ideas and thoughts as it is.
Definitely. Listen, folks are saying they're ordering the book. I will do that. You've given me action items, so now, yeah, I'll do that. I will put the link to all of your social locations, the Instagram and and your website as well, because I've only got right now the link to the book itself within the
And I am on
description.
LinkedIn as well, actually. So,
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, hopefully
and
so,
that
because
is
we're
as me.
streaming to LinkedIn right now. Hopefully, your community is seeing the session as well. This has been really cool, right? A lot of eye opening statements and the concepts. I love this aspect of the pie. I'm locked in on the pie and the fact that of not just consuming it once, but continuing to bake it and eat it again. That's what I'm taking from this, and the rituals of,
Rituals of connection.
man. That's, come on. Come, you might want to trademark that right there. That's pretty darn good right there.
Right,
The
quick, notice
rituals.
here, we're trademarking it, right?
My goodness, that's pretty good right there. Genevieve, you are amazing. I will reach back out to you in the future so we can have other conversations as well. And I know some of the community is going to want to reach out after they get the book, tag you in some posts, and have some further conversations. So with that, I appreciate your time and have a great day.
Thanks, James, and thanks everyone in the community for listening.
Be well.